What's up everyone, it's Flex, back with a voice commented video, and today I will be making a tier list for every map that is in Floodescape 2. In case you don't know what a tier list is, it is basically a ranking system. I will be rating every map in FE2 and then I'll place them on a tier list, with S tier being the best and F tier being the worst. The maps will be arranged from best to worst in each tier, with the maps on the left being the best in the tier and the maps on the right being the worst in the tier. Generally speaking, S tier is only for the best of the best, maps that are special and stand out beyond the rest. For my tier list, I will only be putting the best map of every difficulty into S tier, although this is not a requirement by any means, it's just a preference of mine. A tier is for maps that are excellent, but they have a couple flaws that prevent it from entering the highest tier. B tier maps are maps that are just good. C tier is for maps that are average, D tier maps are bad, and F tier is reserved for the terrible maps only. Now that we have laid out the basic definitions, I'll explain how I will be making the tier list. Basically, for each map, I will be voicing my thoughts about the main qualities that I like and dislike about each map, and I'll also provide a more detailed list of pros and cons in text on screen. Then I'll give an overall score out of 100, representing my general rating for the map, and then place the map in a tier corresponding to the score. Please note that since my tier list is based on my opinion, there will be some rankings that you'll agree with and others that you'll disagree with. But that's honestly the fun part of making a tier list in the first place. And I would actually encourage some respectful disagreement and discussion of your own opinions in the comment section. In addition, this video will also be featuring a communal tier list that was made through community posts. And the purpose of this is to give everyone a general idea of what the FE2 community thinks of every map in the game. And finally, it should also be said that I will only be covering the permanent maps, so event maps and highlighted maps like Northern Workshop or Chaos Japan will not be talked about, but they will be added into the tier list at the end of the video. Now, without further ado, let's begin. I will start with the easy difficulty, and I will be reviewing every easy map in order from worst to best, and then we will work our way up the difficulties. Starting with the worst easy map in my opinion, and that's going to be Castle Tides. The main reason I don't really like Castle Tides is because of how boring it is. I understand that as the easiest map in the game, it's supposed to be peaceful and calming, but there's barely any jumps at all to speak of in the map. As the map is mostly just a lot of emptiness and open space walking. All around, it's an incredibly lackluster and basic map from my experience, especially in terms of gameplay, and it's just not fun. So I'll give it a 37 out of 100, and I'm putting it in the D tier. Another map that I find to be rather lackluster and basic is Axiom. I have this as the second worst easy map because while this map, unlike Castle Tides, actually has some platforming here and there, the jumps that do exist in this map are super repetitive, and it doesn't help that it's not beginner friendly at all since you basically die if you fall. There's also hardly any detail, and there's a lot of grayish colors that make this map look incredibly plain. So because of all this, I'll give Axiom 37 out of 100, which means it's going into the D tier. Now we have Mar Dreams. I'm going to start off by saying that if it weren't for the dreamy atmosphere of this map, it would have been below Castle Tides. The quality of the gameplay in this map is all over the place. The platforming feels extremely rushed with the weird high box platform jumps and the super repetitive plank parts, and the numerous bright colors of this map are kind of unpleasant to look at. Overall, Mar Dreams is extremely uninspiring, mostly because of how weak the gameplay ideas are, so I'll rate it a 40 out of 100 into the D tier. Moving out of the D tier easy maps, we have Poisonous Valley. This map is extremely forgettable to me because there are a number of sections in this map that feel repetitive, and it also doesn't help that there's nothing interesting about the map surroundings or jumps. Although this map does have some pretty cool ideas with the spooky theme and the acid wall, it also lacks a little when it comes to detail and the gameplay experience. Therefore, I'm giving Poisonous Valley a 55 out of 100 rating, which puts Poisonous Valley into C tier. Lost Woods is the next easy map on this list, and honestly, this map is a pretty enjoyable experience. While this map is pretty short, the aesthetics are basic, and there's a little bit more walking that I like. It also has a lot of cool features and structures from plants and trees that create a simple yet charming woods theme. and to me that makes the entire playthrough of the map quite pleasing and worthwhile. Overall, I'll rate it a 60 out of 100, and it's the first map in the B tier. Retro Coast is the first map that is quite new and a former community highlight. And when I returned to FE2 and I played the map for the first time, I was astonished with the amazing attention to detail. Everything in this map is nicely decorated and the visuals bring a lot of chill vibes, all of which fit well within the atmosphere. Although the seaside and digitalized themes of the map clash a little, the map is surprisingly cohesive in gameplay, and it gives the map an overall funky but unique experience. All of this makes Retro Coast the most aesthetically pleasing easy map in my opinion, and I'll rate it 86 out of 100 in the high A tier. Zimblanity is one of the newest maps in the game, and while it's pretty much different from Retro Coast in every way except the fact that both maps are pretty chill, this map was equally pleasant when I played it. It's one of the most calming maps I've ever experienced, largely thanks to the overall soothing and beautiful atmosphere of the map. The aesthetics are top notch, and while the gameplay isn't the most creative, it flows really well. The map does feel a little bit stretched out or slow at times, being the longest easy in the game, but overall I'll rate Zimblanity 87 out of 100, one spot ahead of Retro Coast in the A tier. On to the second best easy map in the game, which in my opinion is Buried Oasis. This map encapsulates a beautiful blue sea world, and like Zimblanity, it's a really relaxing experience. The aesthetic features in the map make the theme and experience of the map all the more astounding, and the gameplay as well varies in both platforming and progression throughout the map. Although if I were to nitpick, there are some questionably difficult jumps for the easy difficulty, and some of the gameplay sections do feel a little overextended in terms of walking. Regardless, this map gets an 88 out of 100, which puts it into the A tier. And finally, the best easy map in my opinion is Forsaken Era. Like the last three easy maps, this map has some pretty amazing details, but the thing that makes this map stand out is the unique structures and platforming, both of which make the map feel more creative and refreshed. This map also has a surprisingly fluid atmosphere contributed by visuals like these falling leaves that really enhances the experience and gives the map a lot of life. The gameplay is also a great contributor to the unique structure, and it fits really nicely to the temple theme. Overall, Forsaken Era is an all-around excellent and creatively built map, and with a rating of 91 out of 100, this makes Forsaken Era the first S tier map in this video. Now we're on to the normal difficulty, and this time I'll be going from worst to best normal map. In my opinion, the worst normal map in the game is Decrepit Seas, and the reason for this is because this is arguably the second ugliest looking map in the game. The corroded metal, the plain grey rocky textures, along with some washed out colors, just make this map look extremely uninspiring and dull. And the gameplay isn't much better either with the amount of backtracking it heavily relies on. Overall, this gets a 33 out of 100 for me, which puts it near the bottom of the D tier. The next normal map I'll rate is Cave System. If I were to describe this map in the simplest way possible, I'd say that's basically Castle Tides, except it's cave themed and more atmospheric. While the crystals give off a nice illuminating feel to give the map its atmosphere, that's all the map really has because of how empty this map is. Most of the map is walking or swimming, some nondescript platforming, and that's about it. So I'll have to give this a 43 out of 100 in the D tier. Forgotten Tombs is the next normal map, and as an event, it was at least creative to the Flood Escape 2 experience, but otherwise there is nothing remarkable at all about this map. The gameplay is either annoying or repetitive and boring. Most of the map has a volcanic rock texture which doesn't look too good, and along with a handful of issues scattered across the map, it feels rather unpolished and roughly executed. As a result, this map gets a 44 out of 100 D tier rating from me. Now we have Sky Sanctuary, which is another map that's pretty unremarkable in all aspects. The map basically feels like the same few platforms used over and over, and it also doesn't help that there are several jumps that spike the difficulty, and if you fall, your run is essentially over. Still, the overall cheerful and calm atmosphere that comes with the bright colors and the sky theme fit the map pretty well. A redeeming factor which spares the map from D tier for me with a rating of 46 out of 100. Oriental Grove is the next normal map that I will rate. This is another map that I don't hate, but I also don't find interesting. This map has a welcoming atmosphere, but the gameplay feels pretty unengaging because of a lack of platforming in this map. The map looks decent as well, but personally there's nothing that's special or attractive about the aesthetics, and to be honest, that describes the map as a whole. It's a fun map, but it's overall a pretty boring experience, so I will give it a 50 out of 100 C tier rating. Next we have Northern Mill, and first I want to say that I don't necessarily consider this a bad map, but it's definitely an original one. I mean, how much credit can I really give to a map that basically took Northern Workshop's whole layout and then smacked the Construction Throw theme over it? Don't get me wrong, Northern Workshop and Construction Throw are both quality maps, but the whole execution feels super forced, and the map basically lost all of its originality and personality as a result. The gameplay is still good quality, but there isn't much merit to give to a map that decided to take two ideas instead of making its own. Overall, I'll give Northern Workshop. Overall, I'll give Northern Mill a 52 out of 100, which puts it in the C tier. Next up, we have Infiltration, and for its time, I would say it held up pretty well, as this was one of the OG maps. It's got a unique theme with the water filtering system thing. The design fits nicely with the theme. However, the gameplay for the most part is not well executed, with how awkward some parts are and how other parts feel like a walking simulator. But for its originality and theme, I'm giving this a higher score than Northern Mill with a 56 out of 100 at the top of the C tier so far. Next we have Mysterium. Despite the fact that this map can be pretty cramped at parts and that makes some of the gameplay at times a little weird, it's a map that has a great theme. The setting of the map has a very mysterious feeling to it, like it's an exploration of some abandoned place. And to me, the overall experience makes up for the map's relatively basic design and flow in the gameplay. Because of this, I'll give Mysterium a 61 out of 100, putting it in the B tier. Fall Equinox is the third best normal map in my opinion. The colors of this map look stunning, the shades of red and orange blend really well to fit the autumn theme. The atmosphere reminds me a lot of Autumn Hideaway, only the gameplay feels much smoother and more quality. However, that's not to say this map is all that amazing. The map still feels very confusing to play as the route progression is not well indicated and pretty complex. To add to that, it also doesn't help that your view can easily be blocked by other aesthetics, and a large quantity of trees sometimes serve more as distraction than design. However, I think this map is good enough for the A tier, and I would give it 75 out of 100. Now we have Construction Throw. The gameplay of the map has a nice flow to it, and I like how the map is sectioned so that the experience gets more intense and enjoyable as you move forward into the map. It has a unique theme, and it's got great designs and structures for the most part. However, this map, like Fall Equinox, can be confusing, although it's not nearly as bad an indication. And I've always thought construction-themed maps looked a little plain for my liking, but Construction Throw is an overall well-executed map. I will rate it an 80 out of 100, which puts it in the A tier. And now for the best normal map in the game, and this may surprise some of you, but in my opinion, it's Flood Island. I understand that this map may not be as great in aesthetics or gameplay compared to other maps, but Flood Island is one of the few maps that possess the quality of realism, in which the map feels applicable towards reality upon playing it. And in my opinion, this map has by far the best theme in the whole game. As the flood enters the island and you're in race to ascend gradually upwards as the flood matches your pace, it's also one of the few maps that actually gives the feeling of the flood, which is when the flood pace feels like it's always chasing you regardless of where you are on the map. Overall, Flood Island is an extremely iconic, nostalgic, and realistic map that I've always enjoyed playing, and for its time it had some truly unique, original, and pure ideas. And that is why it will reside at the very top of S tier. And yes, objectively speaking, this is way overrated, but to be honest, I don't care. It's my second favorite map in the game. Moving into the hard maps, oh god. Oh god. Fallen Classic is by far the worst map in the entire game. And yes, this map does have a unique concept behind it, but aside from that, this map has a lot of issues. So how do I put this in the simplest way possible? Well, for starters, this map has no design, no detail, no colors, no gameplay besides the same platforms copied and pasted over and over, no flow or structure, and there isn't even a freaking flood. The whole thing feels extremely rushed, like it was put together in 6 hours, and oh wait, it was put together in 6 hours. This map does try some creative ideas, but the execution was extremely sucky, and overall it's just a completely failed experiment of a map that somehow got re-added into the game in spite of a revamp coming in by demand of the community. Please remove from the game. I gave this map a rating worse than my tower review. It is complete garbage, but I do want to give praise to the map on one thing. Congratulations, Fallen Classic, on being the first map to get its own tier! Snowy Peaks is the next map I'll rate, and this map is pretty bad, especially when it comes to the gameplay, which is pretty much either a bunch of thin platform sticks or basic walking and jumping on the same snowy parts. The difficulty is not well balanced at all. The jumps are much harder than the pacing, like the flood might as well not exist, and there's not a lot of detail either. Overall, it's an all-around pretty bad map. I mean, I'm gonna give it a 30 out of 100 D tier rating. Up next, we have Crystal Caverns. I appreciate this map for trying to be creative by making it a primarily swimming-based map, and the scenery at least looks decent, but this map is still pretty bad in my opinion, mostly because making a swimming-based map is not a good idea in the first place, and it's almost always going to be inferior to actual parkour-based maps. You're not doing any jumps, and it's not fun. It just feels like you're endlessly swimming and avoiding stuff for about 40 seconds, pressing buttons spread all over the place, which also makes this a good example of a map that's much too easy for multiplayer, but too hard for the hard difficulty solo. Overall, I'll give Crystal Caverns a 42 out of 100 in the D tier. Now we've got Lava Tower, another OG map. I actually don't really hate this map. For being one of the OGs, it's actually still pretty unique in its gameplay concept of traversing up a rickety tower, and the gameplay is decently enjoyable too. However, with that being said, I just can't ignore how awful this map looks. Like, what is this? This is the ugliest map, possibly besides Decrepit Seas, and I guess from the inside it looks kinda cool, but it does leave me wondering what this map was going for here. There doesn't seem to be a conceivable idea for the theme, nor is there any signs of work put into the aesthetics. So for those reasons, I'm giving this map a 48 out of 100 in the C tier. Wild Savanna is the next map I'll be rating. The design of this map is very bland, mostly because the colors look extremely unremarkable, and the structures in this map are basically just boxes, planks, and giant pieces of terrain. Gameplay-wise, this map is pretty solid, but it feels repetitive at times, combined with some launch jump spam because of the lack of variety in the platforming. Overall, it's an alright map, but I'll give Wild Savanna a 57 out of 100, which puts it in the C tier. Next, I'll be rating both Poisonous Forest and Toxic Woods at the same time, mostly because of how similar they are. I'm going to start with Poisonous Forest because that's the original. The map theme is pretty menacing, which creates a pretty cool atmosphere, but the gameplay on the other hand is not nearly on the same level. Most of the buttons are just walking or some minimal jumps, and the platforming feels pretty tight and awkward given that it's a hard difficulty, which is only made worse because of how dark the lighting is. This makes the map experience quite confusing and just simply unenjoyable, which is why this map lands in the C tier with a 57 out of 100. Similarly, Toxic Woods is basically the exact same thing as Poisonous Forest, except it's green. Besides a couple of twists and minor improvements in the lighting and gameplay, the map follows the exact same layout and idea as Poisonous Forest. And if this were a different map that has its own unique concept, I would give it more credit, but like Northern Mill, this map suffers the same case of being unoriginal to the game. And for that reason, I would give Toxic Woods a 59 out of 100, also landing it in the C tier. Next, we've got Relic Valley. I really like how this map looks, the colors are balanced nicely, and there's a nice lighting to it that makes the atmosphere feel magical. Although the gameplay is pretty solid, the pathing feels almost too straightforward and predictable most of the time, which makes it far less interesting than it should be. And the map was still confusing when I played it the first time, thanks to almost no indication. It's a pretty good map though, so I'll rate it 63 out of 100, which puts it in the B tier. Graveyard Cliffside is the next map I'm rating. Looks-wise, this map is far from the greatest, as this map lacks detail, but it's also one of the most creative maps in-game, with the ghost lava wall, several objects features that match the spooky theme, and the horizontal progression. Add that with some fitting colors, along with some gameplay that isn't the most inspiring platforming-wise, but it flows and matches with the theme very well. As a result, Graveyard Cliffside gets a 70 out of 100 in the B tier. Now we have Darkside Forest. This map is pretty well known for being the only map in the game that relies on swimming in acid, and this map uses that concept in an extremely creative way, using factors like timing, air management, and quickness in the acid to make the map a unique experience. But despite this map's creativity, it doesn't have a lot in terms of the actual gameplay, and while the theme is reinforced well, it's also relatively basic in design. Still, I like the idea the map bases itself on, and I would say it's good for the third best hard map, but it's going to just miss out on the A tier with a rating of 74 out of 100. Sedimentary Temple is the second best hard map on my list, and I like it for a multitude of reasons. I think the theme of this map is extremely well executed thanks to features like the structures and the design choices. The colors and lighting have a great contrast as it becomes more polychromatic and vibrant as the map goes on, making the map feel more intense. And the OST, which is one of the best ones in the game, helps with that too. The gameplay as well is super fun, and overall, I think this map is excellent, and really the only reason this isn't in S tier is because the map does look and feel relatively plain and empty at times, while the S tier maps feel a little higher in quality when it comes to certain aspects. Still, Sedimentary gets a well-deserved 87 out of 100 A tier for me. Sunken Citadel is without a doubt my favorite hard map. Aesthetically, this is one of the most flourishing maps in the game. This map is pretty much unmatched when it comes to the level of quality and design and detail, which is what makes this map feel atmospherically diverse. The varieties of everything in this map is another thing that sets this map apart from others, such as the various shapes of the platforming and the rich colors. And the gameplay itself feels like an absolute journey that is well suited for the sunken sea world of a map. Overall, an astounding map that makes for equally astounding experiences. I'll rate it a 92 out of 100, making this our third S tier map. We have made it to the insane difficulty, and starting with the worst insane map, we have Abandoned Facility. This is related to Crystal Caverns regarding my point about swimming-based maps being worse in general, but at least Crystal Caverns had some scenery and decent structures. Band Facility is just a maze of tunnels, which is run on essentially every level. Even though there is quite literally a lack of everything in this map, the Flood does at least create some sense of urgency, which makes the map somewhat intense, preventing it from being completely terrible. I'll give Band Facility a 39 out of 100, which is D tier. Next we have Fallen. Although Fallen has some structural similarities to its classic version, it completely differs and reinvents itself in many other aspects. This map has new colors, platforming, textures, and most importantly, an identity, one of the many things that the nothingness that a Fallen Classic didn't have. Of course, saying that this map is better than its classic version is like saying the floor is made out of floor, and since it's Fallen we're talking about, the floor pretty much is the standard here. This map of course still has issues in annoying gameplay, confusing route progression with branched paths, shortcut issues, etc. But giving credit to the improved design and quality improvements in general, and I would say Fallen is not a bad map. I'll give it a C tier with a 45 out of 100 rating. The next map on this list is Gloomy Manor, and before anyone gets mad, yes I have this as my third worst insane, but that's more on the insane maps being really good than this map being bad. But I do want to say that personally this map is pretty unenjoyable. It feels like the Flood isn't there for most of the map because of how slow it is, and also you barely have to do anything in this map in multiplayer. On top of that, I'm not a big fan of the gameplay. It relies a lot on small jumps, some of which are used repetitively. If that being said though, there's some nice platforming variety, and I also like the execution for the design and theme of the manor. I'll rate the map a 57 out of 100, which is high C tier. Next we have Lost Desert. This map has a simple but cool desert theme, supported by the various aesthetics and features in the map. I also think it's a pretty enjoyable map to play, since it gets more intense as the map goes on, given that the map goes from a remote outside land area to a dangerous lava-filled temple. I do wish the map had some more interesting gameplay, because besides some basic boxes, platforms, and support beams, there's not a lot going on in this map. But overall, it's a pretty solid and simple map, so I'll give Lost Desert a 64 out of 100 B tier rating. Next we have Darkside Facility, a map that people have been calling overrated. I disagree with that to an extent. I think the sci-fi theme is executed extremely well, especially in the second half where the textures combined with the flashing and visual effects gives the map a futuristic and dangerous feeling. The experience of this map is nothing short of unique and intense, a huge reason why this map became iconic back when it was the hardest map in the game. But I do feel like the map gameplay gets overrated because there's not a lot to it. It overuses the same types of platforms and wall gameplay a lot. Despite its flaws though, I think Darkside Facility is a pretty good map. I'll give it a 71 out of 100, which puts it in the B tier. Next we have two maps that I want to rate together, and they are Familiar Ruins and Beneath the Ruins. I love both of these maps for their themes referencing the original Floodscape as a destroyed ruin place, and both of these maps represent these features differently and in creative ways. For Familiar Ruins, I really like the simple but fitting aesthetics and gameplay that pair with the theme. The recreations of the Floodscape 1 ruins in this map are very well designed and effective for the map's purpose. And while the gameplay could have been more inspiring, the map still serves as a great trip down memory lane, and the map has an overall nostalgic vibe and atmosphere to it that is enjoyable to experience every time you play it. I'll give Familiar Ruins a 77 out of 100 A tier rating. Similarly, Beneath the Ruins has several sections with references to Flood Escape 1. Personally, the gameplay in Beneath the Ruins is executed better than Familiar Ruins, as there is more variety and creative features when it comes to the platforming, as well as a more complex pathing, although there are still a few annoyances such as the cramped sections. And I like the sequence of rooms that this map takes you through. As well as being the first map that introduced the lowering lava mechanic, this map basically takes Familiar Ruins and expands it to a much wider idea. and for that, I'll give Beneath the Ruins an 85 out of 100 rating in the A tier. Next we have Magmatic Mines, and aesthetically speaking, this is one of the most beautiful maps in the game. The different shades of brown colors paired with the magma feature a really well themed and detailed mineshaft. The gameplay as well is filled with different varieties and platforms that make this a fun map to play through with the lava chasing you. And the map's sections transitioning from a climbing section to open cave platforming give this map a complete atmosphere. But sadly, this map has a couple major flaws in my opinion. The first of which is the absolute shortcut abuse this map has. There's at least 4 major shortcuts that completely skip several areas of parkour on the map that takes away from the experience to the extent that it doesn't even feel enjoyable. Especially in multiplayer where you either have to take these shortcuts or you need to play catch up the rest of the way. And also the pacing of the map seems to disappear once you pass the climbing section. So overall, I'll have to give this map an 86 out of 100, placing it in A tier. Satomi Springs is one of the newer insane maps in the game, and definitely one of the best in its difficulty. This map does an amazing job with the theme, to create a dangerous yet somewhat calming atmosphere. The design and aesthetics fit the map really well, and the gameplay consists of consistently engaging platforming that keeps the map flowing, and that's a big reason why this map is so enjoyable. I did mention at the beginning of the video that there will be 5 S tier maps, but I decided after some consideration there aren't any cons about Satomi Springs that are worth mentioning. Therefore, I will be placing Satomi Springs into the S tier with a rating of 91 out of 100. And of course, the best insane map in the game and the best overall in-game map to me is without a doubt Sinking Ship. I really enjoy this map for several reasons. First, there is a lot of attention to detail in regards to the features that enhance the map's experience. The swaying effects, falling objects, minor tilting motions of the map all build onto the unique concept that is this map's ship theme. Along with these effects, the climbing section is the absolute best, emphasizing the feeling and speed of the flood while also combining the map's realistic qualities and sight-readable but varying platforming. Ultimately, it is the original and also the best of many climbing sections that this map revolutionized. Like Flood Island, you could say that the quality and aesthetics and the gameplay aren't objectively the best, but it's another map where everything builds to the overall theme, idea, and concept in fitting ways, executing the experience to complete perfection. This map is one of few that really defined what this game was about, and so I decided that I will not be putting this map into the S tier, but into the S plus tier. Now we finally move into the crazy difficulty, where I will start with Decaying Silo, a map that is somehow overhated and overliked at the exact same time. In terms of map quality, this map is definitely the worst of the crazies, especially when it comes to the map's structuring and platforming choices. And I also think this map tries to force a snowy winter theme, which I find to be very unnecessary. But I like the map's misty atmosphere, and it's got some nice colors to it that makes the visuals look at least decent. The gameplay feels far too basic in general, since it's basically a bunch of rectangular, blocky parts, which I don't find very appealing. But I think the map does well in the use of its interesting concepts, like the missile and the lowering lava sections. And although the climbing sections don't exactly have engaging gameplay, it's still a decently intense experience to speedrun and beat the lava. So in my opinion, this map is decent. It's a 63 out of 100 B tier map. Sure, this map may have had its optimization and shortcut issues in the past, and there were better options for a permanent map, but overall the map in itself isn't bad, nor is it great. Poisonous Chasm is the next crazy map I will be rating, and this map does really well in being a dark and scary themed map. The soundtrack of the map is an absolute banger. The lighting and the overall aesthetics and structures of the map are balanced well to make the map interesting. I don't think the gameplay in Poisonous Chasm is the best, however. It feels like it's using a lot of the same types of planks and terrain parts for most of the way, which makes the map feel less fun than it should. And I think the map uses gameplay concepts that were better executed in other crazy maps. Still, this map is pretty good and definitely is an intense experience, so I'll give it a 68 out of 100 B tier rating. Next up, we have Ignis Peaks. A while ago, I called this my favorite community crazy map, but over the last few months, I began to change my mind. And it's for a couple good reasons. Yes, this map's aesthetics have improved by a lot. It looks super menacing and less basic than it was in the past. And yes, I still love the idea behind the Ascending Lava River section. It's one of the most creative parts that are currently in Floodscape 2. And the overall structure of the map is designed pretty well. But I've realized the gameplay, while it has its great moments, feels terribly unoptimized. There are a lot of jumps that just feel kind of awkward to do and near inconsistent at times. And that highly affects the enjoyment level that I had for this map in a negative way. So I have to give Ignis Peaks a 74 out of 100, putting it in the B tier. Blue Moon is the next map I'll be rating, and as the OG crazy map, I think it had a lot of great gameplay ideas. This is the first map that introduced a lot of things like horizontal progression wall jumps, high container box jumps, lava walls, all of which give the map a unique style and revolutionized future crazy maps. It's an overall fun to play experience that is nicely enhanced by the sense of direction and pathing this map takes you through. Design-wise though, while the exterior and theme both look great, some parts within the map look kind of plain and boring. Still, Blue Moon is definitely A tier, and I'll give it 81 out of 100. Now a map that I think has gotten a little overrated, we have Snowy Stronghold, the old community highlight that is the newest permanent map in the game. And this is a W map addition, but in my opinion, I think it's too much to call it the new best map in the game. I do love how the map looks, how it is themed, and how it is sectioned. There's a lot of cool but vibrant winter colors that make this map feel energizing. The cannons and interior structures support the snowy fortress theme of the map. The music is a bop, and the overall experience of the map as you make it to the top is awesome. However, I think it should be mentioned that the gameplay is kind of generic, and the pathing feels predictable, especially in the climbing section. It feels like you're making the same type of platform jumps while winding upwards in the same direction most of the time, which makes the map feel less replayable than other maps. I do like and enjoy the map overall, but the gameplay doesn't quite vary as much in this map as I would like in comparison to the others. So I'll put it in A tier with an 83 out of 100 rating. Sandswept Ruins is the next crazy in this tier list, and I find this to be the type of map that you enjoy the more you play it. It's not the most unique of maps, but just about everything is extremely well executed to make for an enjoyable experience. The desert temple theme is general but makes sense and part of the good number of visuals and aesthetics that add on to the map's setting. The overall map itself grew on me as I got used to the map, as there's a good amount of different sandy colors and platform shapes that come together to create a nice adventure this map takes you on. I would put this in S, but there are a few nitpicky things that I don't like, mostly related to the overall sight readability and difficulty consistency of the map, so I have this at the top of A tier with an 89 out of 100 rating. And finally, the last map on this tier list, and my favorite crazy map, we have Active Volcanic Mines. And maybe there's a little difficulty bias here, but this is by far the most intense and engaging map in the game. The first section serves as a great intro and build up for the climbing section, where the map fully ramps up, and ends with the last room which just feels like an ascension to heaven, and is super satisfying to pull off and survive. The lava and soundtrack match perfectly with the map, both of which create immense intensity. And of course, credit must be given to the actual map quality as well, because the gameplay remains pretty much consistent throughout the entire map, such that it's both easy to learn and get used to, provided you have the skill to beat it. And although it's not the most detailed map ever, the colors blend really well, and there are many creative features like the flashing sirens, falling cave parts, and the rising lift, all of which add various layers of unique and atmospheric qualities to the map. Overall, this map to me is a whole nother level of engagement and intensity in the way that is presented, so I'll give it a 94 out of 100, making it my third favorite map in the game. And now I'll wrap up all of the perm maps in the game. And now it's time to see what the community tier list looks like. Let's go through the polls. Although there are a few outliers, I would say these tier lists match up pretty well, though the community tier list clearly gave higher ratings overall to the maps. And now I'm going to quickly add the highlighted maps into my tier list to finish this video up. that's going to be all for my tier list video. I hope you enjoyed. If you watched the whole thing, thank you so much for watching. Let me know your own tier list thoughts and opinions in the comment section. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye.